Let's learn more about categories and activities in AccuTrack or AccuSQL. So I'm signed in here as an administrator, and I'm looking at sign-in setup, categories, and activities. First of all, what are categories and activities? Well, these are the various items that students can sign into when they come into your center. So what is the reason for their visit? You can design your own activities, like an advising center might have a couple of select activities that students can sign in for, or in a tutoring center, typically you would have all of your courses listed as your activities. So what I'm looking at here are my various categories, and by the way, activities are grouped under categories. So you have to have a top-level category and then the various activities that are available underneath them. Okay, the first thing I want to show you here is see how all of these are active. So all of my activities are active. If you see a situation where they're not active, let me show you where you can set that. So I'll close this screen, and then I'm going to go to System Semesters. Okay, the way AccuTrack and AccuSQL work is when the system opens, it looks for today's date. So today is February 27th. That falls in my spring 2015 semester. So what it will do is make all of the activities active that are on the selected side for today's date. So if you don't have a semester defined that includes today, or if all of your activities, or some of them for that matter, are moved to the not selected side, then when you go back into sign and set up categories and activities, you'll notice that none of these activities are active, okay, because none of them are selected for today. So back to System Semesters, I'll go edit that and move all of my activities back over to my selected side, and then it will magically reactivate all of them. All right, so let's look a little closer here at some of the options that are available for activities. I'll click Edit. Now the first thing you'll notice is I have an activity ID and an activity here. For advising type activities, you normally wouldn't have an activity ID. Think of activity ID perhaps as a CRN or a unique section number for a course. So the one bit of information you have to have is the activity itself, which is activity description here. Activity ID is optional, but again, for courses you would typically have that. Allow unregistered students. So you can use an import in AccuTrack or AccuSQL to import student registration, and those are the courses that students are registered for the current term. So if you only want registered students, pre-registered students, to be able to pick an activity, you would uncheck this box. Okay, if the box is checked, that means a student doesn't necessarily have to be registered in order to select that activity. Next is open for appointment. So if you uncheck that box, that means the activity is only available for a walk-in. A student can't schedule an appointment for that activity. So a good example might be orientation, for example. You don't want students to make an appointment for campus tour. You could leave that box unchecked. Sign in only, that means you don't care about collecting sign outs for that particular activity. You only care about a sign in. So it gives the sign in credit, but it gives the exact same period for sign in and sign out. Global registration, so that's used in conjunction with student course registration. And using registration, again, students would see their registered classes, but if you set something to global, that means that it will be available to all students whether or not they're registered for it. So any student potentially could come in and take a campus tour because I have global registration set. All right, next is max students. Max students is used in conjunction with the activity waiting list, which I have another video on. But basically, activity waiting list enables a certain number of students to be signed into a particular activity at any given time. So for example, if I put 2 here, what I'm saying is a maximum of 2 students can ever be signed into campus tour at the same time. Student 1 signs in, they go take the tour. Student 2 does the same thing. Student 3, it will say the activity is full, and it will put them in a waiting list until a student signs out and frees up a seat for that particular activity. Next is appointment duration, and you'd be obviously open for appointments if you're using appointment duration. Now in AccuTrack or AccuSQL, you have a lot of appointment setup options, one of which is the minimum and maximum duration for an appointment. So that's a global setting for all appointments, but you can override that minimum maximum on a particular activity level. So if you wanted to make that more or less, you would do so here with minimum and maximum for the appointment duration. And I'm going to switch here to course tutoring because it makes a little more sense on the next options. Okay, the next one here is activity schedule. Now these are typically imported, but you can add them yourselves if you'd like, but this is when a particular class is taking place. So 310 to 410, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday is my Anatomy and Physiology 2 course. So using the activity schedule, I can turn on an option in AccuTrack or AccuSQL that says disable students' ability to sign in to AccuTrack or AccuSQL or make an appointment during scheduled class time. So that's what activity schedules do. Okay, down here I'll talk about this lab option in a second, but over here we have the professors or instructors that teach the particular class. You can enable the student's ability to pick the professor or instructor when they sign in, and then we can use that in various ways, one of which is a scheduled instructor report, we call it, but you can send a report to every professor or instructor showing attendance in the center for a particular given period of time. Down here we have some various reports you can run, so if I want to see which students are registered for Anatomy and Physiology 2, I can do so. I don't have any here. Let's try Anatomy and Physiology 1. And I have 3 students registered for that class. I can look at the visits for that class real quickly here. So only 1 student is visited. And Advanced just enables me to run a little bit more detail, like the period of time I want to see for the activity sign-ins, and I can save that in various formats, HTML, Word, or Excel. Okay, so let's go look at our setup options. So sign in, setup, and then activity screen options. So I'm saying allow picking an activity, show the professor, show the service type. Now I haven't talked about that, but a service type, let's close real quickly, is right here, and that's just an additional bit of information you can collect from the student. In this case I have required hours or self-study, so it's just another box that you can collect information on at student sign-in that you can later report on. Okay, but back here let's look quickly. Instructors, service types, I'm not showing registered activities, and I'll show you how that works in a second. So I'm happy with that. So let's return to our sign-in screen here and sign in as a student. And now I'm seeing my various categories, the activities that appear underneath them, and remember I'm showing a service type and the professor that teaches the class. So I'm going to cancel this, and let's go change those settings slightly. Sign in, setup, and then activity screen options. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click only show registered activities in the activity screen. Okay, let's save that and return to sign in. Now I sign in with the same student ID, and I have computer use, academic, and personal use. Well, remember those are global, so every student's going to see those. Orientation is the same way, but now under course tutoring, I don't have all of my courses. I only have the one course that Lamar in this case is registered for, which is Calc 1. Okay, so that's how student registration works in conjunction with global activities. Back in as admin. And now I'm going to go to sign in, setup, categories, and activities again. And let's look a little closer at local labs right here. Okay, so I've got a series of math classes here in my activity list right here. Okay, and what I want you to notice is it says available in these specific labs. So default all lab, which is what I'm set to now, shows every activity. It doesn't differentiate by local lab. Okay, but I now have this these math classes, as you can see, available in my math lab. Now, it's a one-to-many relationship, so what I mean by that is I can modify and say I want Calc 3 available in my math lab and my computer lab, or any other labs you may have defined in the system. So let's go back and look at labs for a second. I'll close this and go to System Lab IDs right here. And I have a computer lab and a math lab. Now, my math lab, I can go see all of the activities that are attached to my math lab right here by View Modify Activities Held and assigned. As you can see, in my math lab, I have all my math classes. Now, I can switch and see, I can switch and see what activities are available in my computer lab by clicking it and looking at activities. And it has 2 computer use, academic and personal, and math statistics. Now, if I don't want to show math statistics, I can just double click it and move it back to the top, and it won't appear in my computer lab. Now, how do we know what to show in the various labs? You do so by setting the sign-in station to whatever lab it's currently sitting in. So let's say that this computer now is a sign-in station in my math lab. I'm going to go change now to math lab and save. And now let's return to the sign-in screen again. And you'll notice I only have math courses showing. Now, you may ask yourself, where are those global activities? Okay, the local lab designation is going to override global. So since I don't have academic and personal computer use available in my math lab, those activities will never even show up in my screen. What I'm showing is all of the math courses that are available in my math lab. Now, if I switch again to computer lab, for example, academic and personal use, let's go check that real quick. Computer lab, so now I've changed labs again. So now this computer's sitting in the front of my computer lab. You can see I've got no buttons showing. It says Welcome to Computer Lab. So I sign in now with the same student ID. And I've locked the computer lab to computer use, and I have 2 items available, academic and personal use. So that's how activities work as far as the settings, how you want them to be available to students, if you want them to sign in and out, if you want them to be available for appointments or not, if you want to prohibit students from signing in during the period that that class takes place, and finally how you can use these categories and activities in conjunction with various computer labs.